So from a customer acquisition perspective, if we're considering acquiring and potentially integrating another brand, I think there's two areas we need to think about. First of which is value preservation, and the second of which is value creation. So from a value preservation perspective, we need to understand the role that the target or to be integrated brand is playing from a customer acquisition perspective. So if it's a brand that's got a high degree of awareness among the target customer base, if it's a brand that's seen very positively, that means that a business has to spend less money on paid marketing, maybe it enjoys higher conversion rates, benchmarks well against competitors. Those are all things that we want to preserve. And we need to be thoughtful about how we treat the target brand in order to achieve that. From a value creation perspective, we might be thinking about whether there is a synergy, a 2 + 2 = 5 scenario with our existing brand, maybe because it will allow us to sell a combined product offering or a bundled offering to our existing customer base by taking two different but complementary product sets. We might think that actually our existing brand has much stronger awareness and sentiment in the minds of our target audience, and that we would benefit from taking the products and services of the target brand and putting it behind our existing brand. So really thinking through value preservation and value creation opportunities separately will tend to lead us to the right answer when it comes to what we should do with a target brands from an integration perspective. Always got to be based on the particular situation that we're looking at. I personally don't have a dogmatic view that we must always end up with one brand in a business or always preserve all of the separate brands. And actually I think a middle ground is often a really good answer, even if that's only for a period of time. I tend to think slightly differently about B2C versus B2B. So we typically find that in B2C, and maybe also in software businesses, the brands carry more salience in the minds of customers. There's typically more value accrued behind them in terms of marketing efforts that will drive a certain amount of new customers into the business without having to spend that extra paid marketing investment. Whereas maybe in business services, people are aware of the brands, but there's a strong association with the individuals or leaders in those businesses. So typically we start from thinking about where are we getting customers from today, where do we want to get customers from in the future, and are we going to net achieve a better result across those aspects of value preservation and value creation if we are aiming for a fully integrated single brand business or aiming for a multi-brand business, or considering a hybrid model where perhaps from the market perspective, we've got many front doors, so many different individual brands which are retaining specialism in their fields and a particular focus, but under the hood we have an integrated business where we can serve customers in a coherent way across those different brands if they become multi-brand customers, if you like. So in my experience, typically we want to carefully map out where we're trying to get to in the longer term and then make the right decision about how and when to integrate the different brands. Certainly there are reasons that carrying different brands creates extra cost and friction, and often people coming at this from a general business perspective think that it's better to integrate brands fully for that reason, normally as quickly as possible. But as a marketer, I think we need to be a bit more thoughtful about effectively the cost benefit we get from having different brands. So a really practical example of this might be we've worked with a business that operates multiple brands targeting the same customers in overlapping product categories. So when they are thinking about spending money on digital marketing, maybe ranking organically in search engines or in LLMs, those multiple brands effectively give them many bites of the cherry, as it were, so they can capture a greater mind share or visibility among the target customers. If we were to collapse those down into a single brand, we would lose quite a lot of that visibility. It would go to our competitors because there would still be 10 brands mentioned on the first page of Google, and we would go from having 3 of them to having 1 of them. So that's a different perspective that I would have as a marketer. That is always a consideration when thinking about how we integrate the brands.
So some of the early warning signs that I'd look at to see if an integration was going well from a go-to-market perspective would be how well we're describing our combined propositions externally. So reading the website, looking for integrated messaging, describing one cohesive product set rather than talking about lots of individual brands or diverse fragmented product offerings. I would look at whether we have strong collateral and sales enablement materials that combine the different product sets together into one coherent offering, where we're talking about today's products and today's brand rather than things we had in the past and our history. And I'd also look at how well our sales team can describe the new integrated offering, or whether they are using legacy terminology, legacy brand names, etc. Some of the metrics I would look at to really test this would be, for example, how well we are presenting and ultimately converting that bundled or combined offer to initial new customers. So for example, if we're a software business and we've got an HR module and a recruitment module, how well are we presenting both and converting both at initial point of sale? And I'd also look at our success in cross-selling to the existing customer bases of both brands. So how well do we sell product A to brand B's customers or product B to brand A's customers? I think one other operational metric that I also think is really insightful to look at is if we look at our sales team, what is the product or brand mix of each individual seller? So I'm looking to see that the sellers that have come from business B are now selling product A, and the sellers that have come from business A are selling product B, provided that there aren't obvious technical reasons why that isn't possible. Because that tells us that we're doing the right job in terms of integrating at each level, from our external positioning to customers, within our sales team, and ultimately in the customer base that we're building. I think considering how well aligned or different the different aspects of go-to-market are across two different brands that we're looking to integrate is fundamentally important and has to shape not just where we're trying to get to in terms of integration, but the steps we're going to take to get there and the order in which we're going to execute those steps. I think that's important in terms of the go-to-market effectiveness. I think it's also important in terms of the critical cultural, people and process integration that happens when two businesses are being put together. So for example, if we've got business A, which is really strong in a direct digital marketing channel, and if we've got business B that has a very strong partner route to market, when we're looking to combine those two things together, that's a great opportunity to build centers of excellence around those two different teams, to give them a broader remit across both brands. Whereas if we've got two really strong digital marketing teams in the two brands that we're bringing together, we need to be much more thoughtful about how we combine those in order to get the benefits of being an integrated business without carrying additional cost, inefficiency, or creating unnecessary tension between two teams that are trying to pursue the same goals together. So it's a key thing that we start often pre-deal through our go-to-market due diligence work, and especially post-deal, to really map out where we're starting from in terms of those different aspects of go-to-market and we're trying to get to, that helps us come up with the right plan. So when we're thinking about how to adapt or change potentially an ideal customer profile or ICP to encompass an acquired brand, I think it's important that we really think about what was the broader rationale for the acquisition of the bolt-on in the first place. If that bolt-on was to bring in a bigger sample of the same customer base of our existing business, then there's likely quite a big overlap between the ideal customer profiles already. If it was to bring a new customer segment for whom our existing product set is relevant, but we've not been able to access, for example, in a different country or a different size of business or a particular group or demographic, then I think it's probably valid for us to update our ideal customer profile for the business overall to encompass that newly acquired customer base. If it's fully overlapped with our existing customer base, but in offering a different product category, then we have to be a little bit more careful, because especially in a B2B context, we could have overlapped companies from an ICB perspective, but be selling to very different buyers. So for example, if a CRM provider were to acquire an email marketing platform, you might think that's great, the ICP is going to fully overlap there. But one is selling to the revenue operations team for the CRM, and one is selling to the marketing team for the email marketing platform. So we need to be quite careful about how we integrate those ICPs together. And we might create two separate ICPs where the company aspects are shared, but the buying persona aspects are different. So my recommendations in this are to look at the overall rationale for the transaction, where we're starting from in terms of an overlap of target customer base, buying personas and use cases. And that will typically yield the right answer in terms of how we need to adapt the ICP, if at all. So as a CMO, in those first 100 days after an acquisition, to make sure we're hitting the ground running and achieving the best possible outcome from a go-to-market perspective, I think my first piece of advice would be not to rush. I think there can be a lot of assumptions that are made during the acquisition process on perhaps limited or incomplete information. There can be a lot of opinions about what the right thing to do is. If we might have founders involved, maybe from the business that we've just acquired as well, there'll be strong opinions that we need to listen to, but also not be unduly influenced by. So first of all, don't rush. Secondly, I think the most important thing for a CMO to build is a picture of where they're trying to get to, which is not something they're going to realistically complete in the first 100 days, but they need to set out along the right path. So for example, an understanding about how the ICP of the overall business might be adapted or changed by the acquisition, what mix of marketing channels and hence resources and activities we're going to be running across the combined business, the enlarged group, and also whether any parts of our prospect and customer journey need to be adapted. So for example, if we have been a strongly digital marketing led business in our core marketing activity, but we've acquired a business that's heavily driven by events or outbound sales or a partner channel, then there's going to be a lot of operational changes that we need to be making, both in terms of our team organization structure, the processes we use, maybe the systems we use, and also the measures of success. So I think building that picture about where you're trying to get to, and then prioritizing the no regrets, enabling type decisions that you can achieve in those first 100 days is probably my third recommendation. So big choices like what systems are we going to end up using? What is the org structure that I'm aiming for? And what are the biggest changes with the longest lead time that I need to start making a move on now? And then communicating all of those things together to your external and internal stakeholders. So that is not rushing, having the picture of where you want to get to perhaps in 12 or even 18 months time, and then starting to make progress on the no regrets, biggest impact, slowest to implement initiatives, and communicating all of that to your stakeholders.